Hey, okay. Well, I haven't done this in a while, but there's some important stuff going on, and it's not what you may think. There's actually some other things going on that people need to know about, and it's more corruption in the Minnesota GOP. And everybody remember the movie Braveheart, one of my favorite movies of all time. And there's so many lessons that can get learned watching Braveheart that are applicable to politics because politics is all about the adjudication of power. Whose power is going up, whose power is going down, all these little power centers that are happening. And it gets easily corrupted because absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I correlate this to Braveheart because, well, the obvious, it's so easily compared. So you remember, I'm going to show you some pictures. You remember this guy, Longshanks, the king, right? This desperate and dying king that is losing his power quickly. And it, of course, upsets him. Nobody in a position of power likes to lose that power. So Longshanks is this corrupt individual that's literally dying in the movie. And he sees the amount of support and the love of the Scottish people that they have for Braveheart, because he's this principled person who's trying to liberate them. Next up, let's just do a refresher. This guy, Robert the Bruce, the loyal subject and pawn of Longshanks, who he himself wants to be king someday and sells his soul throughout the movie for more power, more land. This guy ultimately at the very end, I'm going to spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the movie, maybe mute this right now. But at the end of the movie, he ends up being a pretty good guy. But he stabs the main character in the back, Braveheart. Braveheart, I think this character is very familiar for everybody. The relentless fighter of liberty and trying to liberate his people. And these are the three characters I want you to keep in mind, because there's three other characters in Minnesota that really associate to these three characters: Longshanks, Robert the Bruce, and Braveheart. But before I get to who those three people are, let's do a little recap here. Because how does this really apply? So here's a little backstory that a lot of people don't even realize. We have an Otter Tail County issue in Minnesota that has been covered a ton. I've talked about it a ton. All the social media. We went up to Otter Tail County, I think on March 15th. And what people don't realize is I wasn't alone in the car on the way up to Otter Tail County. I had a passenger in my vehicle, and it was a member of the Minnesota GOP State Exec Committee by the name of Wendy Phillips. I've known Wendy for, two and a half years now. And she wanted to meet with the people that David Hann disenfranchised when he just said, nope, don't care. None of you guys are delegates. We're going to pretend the 2024 caucus never even happened. We're just going to go back to his cronies that got elected in 2022 as delegates. People don't realize that Wendy went up there with me. She wanted to meet these people. She wanted to hear their story. She wanted to see their evidence. But what also people probably don't have any clue about is she is extremely fair. On our way up to Fergus Falls that night, she called the treasurer of the BPOU, the Otter Tail County BPOU, by a gal named Laura Miracle. I think it's Tommy Miracle's wife, the swamp creature Tommy Miracle. And I encouraged her, why don't you call up Laura? She wants to meet with you. And then maybe you can meet with the BPOU side, hear their case. And I'm assuming that Laura probably wouldn't have wanted me there if she even took the meeting, which she didn't. And then we'd go over and meet the 300 some odd people at Otter Tail County that were damaged and disenfranchised by David Hann. So Wendy made that call. And I'm driving, she's in the passenger seat, and Laura Miracle would not meet with us. I didn't have to be there. I don't think Laura even knew I was in the car. So she refuses to meet, and my understanding is she never got on a phone call or met with Wendy. But that's just a great example of Wendy trying to hear all sides of the story and figure out what's going on up here and what's the right thing to do. So we went up there, we heard from the hundreds of people, we rummaged through dozens and dozens of documents. We captured the stories. There was a video produced that went out there to make sure people know here's what actually happened firsthand from all these people. And then it was about a month later, and I'm skipping a lot of stuff, so this has evolved quite a bit, but I'm going to give you the highlights. The folks up in Otter Tail County reached out to Wendy and said, hey, will you chair our convention? They want a fair chair. And their convention was constitutionally called by the precinct chairs of the BPOU. Regardless of what our own Longshanks here, Mr. David Hann, has to say, or the rest of the folks on state exec committee, that was constitutionally called. That was a legitimate convention that, of course, if you haven't heard, they have said, no, it's illegitimate. So I think it was the following week, CD7 had their convention. They didn't seat any of the 2024 delegates. But Wendy went up, did their convention, chaired it. As I understand it, it was a great time. And she was very fair. But now what is happening and why I'm doing this video? Well, there's backlash because you have Longshanks here, the dying, desperate politician, king of the MNGOP, whose power is quickly evaporating as it's becoming very, very clear that this guy is a tyrant. He doesn't care what the people think. He doesn't care what your average Republican donor, Republican volunteer. He doesn't care about you. He cares about himself. In fact, here, I'm going to play this, because you don't have to take it from me. Take it from David Hann yourself. I bumped into him at an endorsing convention in Lakeville about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So give this a listen.
Dave, what is the process for this task force that you're going to appoint?
I'm not willing to discuss that with you because I don't trust you. So sorry.
Who appoints the task force?
I'm not going to talk to you about it at all.
Sorry. I just met with hundreds of people in Otter Tail County last night.
Good for you. I've met with a lot of people too.
How many?
Hundreds. I don't know.
Hundreds up there. That's funny. They said they've never seen you up there.
That's fine. People say whatever they want.
Okay. Well, Jeff Backer and Tom Murphy said they'd be sending you a letter demanding you reinstate these delegates.
They can do whatever they want.
Okay. So how many people are going to be on the task force?
I'm not obligated to share any information about what I'm doing with you, and I'm not going to.
How long do they have to do their conclusion?
I'm not talking about what we're doing to you.
Are you going to recuse yourself?
I'm not going to talk to you about this at all.
No?
No, because
I'm a state central delegate.
That's fine. Be a state central delegate, but you do not have the right to know what I'm going to do. Sorry.
Who does have the right to know?
I do.
You do? You're the only one who has the right to know.
Well, I'm following
so
the process.
People don't have the right to know.
I'm following the process we have in our rules, and I'm not going to share what we're going to do because we as a board have a standing obligation to keep our deliberations internal, although I know there's a few of them that tell you everything we do because they're dishonorable people. But other than that...
Who's dishonorable?
Well, they know who they are. They can tell you who they are. The people who call you from our board meetings and tell you what they're doing.
So there you go. He says he's the only one who gets to know what he's going to do, but he works for us. He works for the State Central Committee, of which I'm a member, and there's like 300 other members across the state. But he just railroads everybody along his path in his quest for power, in his quest for his political agenda, which is, of course, yes men. That's what he wants. He wants everybody on that board to be yes men. Do as you're told. Do not push back. And that is really the essence of politics, to be perfectly frank. I'm getting a live feed from the Minnesota GOP headquarters right now. I'm gonna see what this is here. A total clown show. These people are a joke. They're tyrants. They don't care about your average, everyday conservative, Republican, libertarian, anybody who believes in the principle of liberty. These people do not care. Now, they campaign as if they care, but their actions speak otherwise. So what's happening right now to Wendy is you've got Longshanks, David Hann, who is putting forward his stooge, his pawn, his loyal subject, the CD1 chair, Aaron Ferris. This young, impressionable buck that has no idea what he's getting into, but clearly has political ambitions. And I would tell you and anybody who asks, what are the types of politicians and people in politics to avoid? It is, frankly, anybody with ambition, which is crazy, to say, because in the business world, in the real world, you want people with drive. You want people with ambition, but you do not want a politician or anybody in politics who has ambition, because they will care more about that ambition than they do about delivering their promises to the people they're supposed to represent. But there are some exceptions. And I emphasize some. There's like a handful of exceptions, but we have a handful here in Minnesota. So who is the Braveheart of this story? Well, it's probably pretty clear, because we have Wendy Phillips. Wendy Phillips is the Braveheart of this story. She's the one who is doing what is right. She is the one who is representing the people, the grassroots people all across Minnesota. Certainly, she's gone, in my opinion, almost out of her way up in CD7, because she's the CD1 rep. So when she went to chair that convention, I bet she drove 600 miles round trip to go do that. Not many people are willing to drive 600 miles to go chair a convention for free. You don't get paid to do that stuff. But Wendy Phillips went up there to have the people's back up in Otter Tail County. And that is so rare. When I tell people, especially candidates that are running for office, or anybody really getting involved in politics, some of the first advice I tell them is do not trust anybody until they politically bleed for you. And that's kind of a strange term, but what I mean by that is until somebody does something for you that hurts their ability to remain in politics, I do not trust them. I don't trust them one iota. Wendy Phillips driving 600 miles to go chair a convention in a very controversial convention, because months of things led up to this. And ultimately, it was no shock that the state party was going to consider this an illegitimate convention, but she did it. So someone like that, that's willing to risk political capital and still do the right thing, those are the types of people we can trust. Those are the types of people we need in politics. Those are the types of people we really need in Republican politics, because Lord knows you're not going to trust many Democrats out there, especially Democrats by the name of, Nicole Mitchell. I've got my basement windows right here. I guess I better keep an eye out on things, because who knows what happens in basement windows throughout the night. But it's only 7:00. I guess I've got another 9 hours before that might become a risk. But that's what's happening. So she's getting attacked by David Hann and this Aaron Ferris kid. Let me show you his picture again. Aaron Ferris. I actually met this kid at Lisa Hansen's endorsing convention. And I remember Lisa Hansen. You remember the grandma who got thrown in jail by Tim Walz for serving coffee. That's it. She opened up during the lockdowns to serve people coffee and wine. This Aaron Ferris kid, I met him down there. And to Lisa Hansen's credit, she's got a good eye for these things. She said, watch out for that guy. He's got ambition. He's trouble. And when I didn't even know, I didn't remember his name until I Googled it just now before going live. And then I see, it's that kid from Freeborn County. So this Aaron Ferris guy, he is doing the bidding of Minnesota's own Longshanks, David Hann. And no doubt he's been promised something, to climb the political ladder. He's trying to rub those elbows with those politicians and, play the relationship game, because that's what all these people tell you is, well, it's all about relationships. And anywhere other than politics, obviously, yeah, the business world, like relationships have value. Nobody's going to argue that. But in politics, if you put relationships with other politicians first, you're not going to be effective whatsoever, because you're just going to join the club and you're going to cower to every single thing. So it's a total shame that David Hann, our own Longshanks, this guy desperate to retain power, has recruited this Aaron Ferris kid, the chair of CD1. So he has legitimate power, but they're going to use it illegitimately, and they're going to try to kick Wendy Phillips off of the state exec committee. That's what they're shooting to do on May 13th. There's a CD1 committee meeting, and it's going to be on the agenda. Aaron Ferris told Wendy yesterday that he's going to make sure the motion to kick her off of State Exec Committee will be on the agenda on May 13th. And there are very few people on the State Exec Committee that you can trust to vote to protect the grassroots. Very, very few. And one of them is most definitely Wendy Phillips. So a total shame, but that's what you can expect when you start to threaten the political power by just doing the right thing of the people in charge. So David Hann sees that Wendy Phillips is being appreciated and frankly adored by folks across the state, especially up in CD7 and Otter Tail County, and he will not tolerate it. He will not tolerate somebody that the people actually appreciate and adore, because it's a threat to his political power and his position. It's so sad. It's so, frankly, it's pathetic. But that's what David Hann and Aaron Ferris are doing. So I got one more thing I want to talk about, and I would encourage you to reach out to this Aaron Ferris kid, call him, email him, tell him, don't you dare try to take out Wendy Phillips, like one of the very few votes that we can count on throughout the state. You know, if there's 6 million people in Minnesota, you can probably figure 3 million conservatives. Granted, some of those are going to be kids and people under the age of 18, but that's half of the state that is getting very good representation by Wendy Phillips on the State Exec Committee. And certainly the people in CD1 ought to appreciate the fact, if there's any patriots left in CD1, and I know there are, they should be thanking Wendy Phillips for being a voice of reason on the State Exec Committee instead of being a voice of tyranny like so many of the other members on State Exec. Then the last thing I want to talk about, I've been meeting with some folks, and we've seen a lot of really good candidates get endorsed. Grassroots candidates, people who are fed up and watching a broken system, people fed up of watching cowardly Republicans who don't have the political will to actually do what they told people they would do. I think it's funny. I got to say this. It's been driving me nuts the last 2 days. Watching the House Republicans on the floor for like 12 to 15 hours a day debating gun control legislation that the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus helped craft. They're making it easier to pass gun control, but whatever. If you want to claim to be a guns group while you're helping people, helping Democrats pass their gun control agenda, I'll let them try to explain that to their people. But watching these Republicans rail against this gun control, while it's kind of refreshing, although most of it's going to be used just for campaign speeches, then get reelected. Why is it when Republicans have the majority in the state house, they don't spend 15 hours fighting for pro-gun bills? They don't do any of that. They don't even take a vote on pro-gun bills. It's pathetic. But as I've been meeting with these people, and I'm talking legislators, candidates, you know, I help people out in my own personal time. There's a lot of great candidates that got endorsed. There's a lot of incumbents that lost their endorsement. Greg Davids down in Houston County lost his endorsement to a newcomer named Gary Stewart, I believe. Brian Johnson. Well, let me say this. Greg Davids down in Houston County, the incumbent that lost the endorsement, he's been in the House for 32 years. I bet there's people watching this that aren't even 32 years old, but that dude has been in the Capitol for the last 32 years. And he ended his speech, his concession speech at his endorsing convention by saying, "I'll see you in August," indicating he's just going to run in a primary. When 2 years ago when he ran, he was endorsed, but his opponent or an opponent popped up and ran against him. And he has apparently told that person that ran against him 2 years ago, running against an endorsed candidate is not the right way to do things. But of course, now that he's lost his endorsement, I'm sure he has no problem with the mental gymnastics of saying, oh, now it's perfectly fine for him to do it. Brian Johnson up in, just north of the cities, he lost his endorsement. I think he's been in there 10 or 12 years. He lost it to a guy named Jimmy Gordon, I believe. There's been a lot of good endorsements and some bad ones. Really, another good one is Ron Kresha. He's been in the state house for 12 years. He lost his endorsement. Now, his opponent didn't get endorsed either, so there's going to be no endorsement. There's just going to go straight to primary. But my point with telling you all this is rumors are coming up that the folks in power, House Republican leadership, they don't like it. They don't like having Greg Davids, who's been there 32 years, lose his endorsement. In other words, they don't care about the delegates. They don't care about who the delegates wanted to endorse or who the delegates trusted with their endorsement. They just want their boy. They want their boy Greg Davids back, their brother, as they often call themselves or call each other. So what I'm hearing is they plan on going after endorsed candidates again. And I'm getting all sorts of indications of this. So if they're going to keep doing this, which of course is what they did to me in 2018, the HRCC, an official party unit, HRCC stands for the House Republican Campaign Committee, they spent like $35,000 against me in 2018, even though I was the endorsed candidate. And then they turn around and spent like $9,000 against the Democrat. They have since stopped doing that because we wielded some political pain against them for doing it. But then they've been using the Jobs Coalition. And historically, it's the same leadership. It doesn't matter. Like Jobs Coalition, HRCC, but one is a party unit, one is an outside group. So, but the leadership is the same. So what I'm hearing is they're going to be primarying endorsed candidates again. So my message to you all is, who wants to run for office? If the party and the party units, the incumbents, the politicians are going to ignore these endorsements, which indications I'm getting is that they are going to ignore them, then screw it. Let's find primary challengers. Let's go to battle. Anybody who wants to run on a primary, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you in my own personal capacity. More than happy to help you, because there's probably 4 or 5 total Republican legislators in our state capitol that are worth a damn. So let's clean house. Get rid of these clowns. So I'm very curious. The filing deadline is going to be here in about 2 or 3 weeks. It's going to be very, very interesting. So if you're interested in running, I would love to hear from you. Reach out. Let's chat. And now let's kick these rhinos out of office. The rhinos like David Hann, the rhinos like Aaron Ferris, who's attacking patriot Wendy Phillips and trying to kick her off of the state exec committee. Let's go ahead and respond in kind. What do you say? Like, let's go to battle with these people and let's teach them a lesson that if they really want to get majorities back in bodies, maybe they ought to respect the delegates that endorse these candidates instead of continuously attacking them. So with that, I digress. But again, our Longshanks here in Minnesota, the desperate, power-hungry person that's dying and losing his power, David Hann. Like, this guy's got to go. He's just got to go. He will not stand up for the people. I played the video for you. He doesn't care about the people. He doesn't care about the people he works for. He doesn't care about Republican volunteers, donors, unless you're a big donor. If you're a big donor or a big fundraiser like Tommy Boy up there in Otter Tail County, well, he'll listen, and he will apparently go to war for you, and he will just stomp and trounce on hundreds and hundreds of caucus goers in an entire county and pretend the whole thing didn't even exist. If you're a big donor or a big fundraiser, and they're coming after Wendy and his pawn, of course, Aaron Ferris, this, 14-year-old kid down in Freeborn County. That 14-year-old kid is going to try to kick out Patriot Wendy Williams in 10 days. So please reach out to Wendy, thank her for her efforts. Reach out to this Aaron Ferris kid and tell him to grow a pair and stand up against David Hann. Thanks, everybody.